शुक्रवार 6 फरवरी को दिल्ली के फॉरेन करस्पॉन्डेंस क्लब में भारत यूएस ट्रेड डील को लेकर एक विशेष चर्चा का आयोजन किया गया। इस दौरान भारत यूएस ट्रेड डील को लेकर पैनल डिस्कशन किया गया, जिसमें जियोपॉलिटिक्स और अमेरिकन कल्चर के एक्सपर्ट रविंदर सचदेवा और जेएनयू के सेंटर ऑफ इकोनॉमिक्स स्टडीज और प्लानिंग के प्रोफेसर सुरजीत मजूमदार, वरिष्ठ पत्रकार प्रकाश नंदा, डॉक्टर YLS अवध के साथ PM नारायणन मौजूद रहे। देर तक चले चर्चा के दौरान भारत अमेरिका ट्रेड डील के पीछे की कहानी और उसके भारत पर पड़ने वाले असर को लेकर चर्चा हुई। मुख्य वक्ता सुरजीत मजूमदार ने बताया कि कैसे यह डील भारत के नजरिए से अहम है और अमेरिका के साथ भारत के संबंध इससे कितने मजबूत होंगे। साथ ही उन्होंने भारत और अमेरिका डील के दो पहलू को बताया कि दोनों देशों में टैरिफ के पहले कैसे संबंध थे और उसके बाद कैसे संबंध हैं। उन्होंने यह भी बताया कि जब डील के तहत व्यापार शुरू हो जाएगा तो भारत को किस तरीके की चुनौतियों का सामना करना पड़ सकता है।
If you look at India's position vis-a-vis the US, there are two reference points that one can use to compare what's likely to be the position now. One is the position before the Trump tariff war began, and the other is the position that was immediately there before the deal. So it's clear that there might be some reduction in terms of what duties will be charged on Indian exports. Some tariffs are coming down, but certainly the general tariffs that were imposed by the Trump administration at the beginning, the tariffs imposed on steel, aluminum, etc., which are on the under Section 232 of their Trade Act, those will remain in place. Okay. Whereas India will obviously be giving some concessions relative to its position before the tariff war began, because India did not really retaliate like others, so it wasn't. So in that sense, it's clear that on balance, compared to the position that was there before the second Trump administration began, India will be having to give up more than it will be getting. It's only in relation to the immediate context before the deal that you could say that there is some possibility of improvement, but we do not know all the details as yet. This is the larger context that existed, and once the Trump administration starts using this trade, the access to the US market as a means of, as the leverage to make others apply, India faces a problem which is also somewhat unique. Okay, somewhat unique because it has to, depend on this thing. So, because of this condition, India was actually perhaps bargaining from not a position of strength. Okay, it wasn't a position of strength for India. Okay, because now there is a problem of an immediate problem that you have to make concessions in order to protect whatever you have. Okay, instead of losing everything, you try and protect something, you have to make certain concessions. But if you are ending up in a position where in the long run you're going to lose or reduce that surplus, how is India going to make that up? Okay, its deficits with East Asia were the reason that you didn't go into the RCEP. You opted out of it. But therefore if you're not integrating towards Asia, is in the long term an integration towards the West, given the shifts taking place in the world, going to resolve India's problems or not? That is a serious question. So perhaps at an immediate context, you signed a deal with EU because both EU and India are dealing with the US problem also. Okay. And you have signed a deal with the US. It's not a free trade agreement, but it's a deal, a trade deal, where you have had to make certain concessions surely compared to what existed before. We'll know only the details when the fine print comes, but this deal is, to my view, something that can resolve an immediate deal with an immediate problem. But in the long run, the question is, does India have a forward path, given that the rupee is not a dominant currency in the world, a forward path where it can live with larger deficits than it already has? If not, where is it going to make it up from?
आगे जियोपॉलिटिक्स और अमेरिकन कल्चर के एक्सपर्ट रविंदर सचदेवा ने बताया कि यह डील पूरी तरह से अर्थव्यवस्था को बनाए रखने के लिए किया गया है। उन्होंने डील के बीच टैरिफ को लेकर भी अहम बातें साझा की।
In a big picture, what I think the age in which we are living in, it's not a new world order, so to say. I find it to be a new world matrix under construction. We are living in an era in which, okay, you could say new world order, but rather a new world matrix is being constructed right now. And this era, I would say, started with COVID. When COVID ended, the world came to stop. For the first time ever in humanity, the world has stopped. By the time we were coming out, or the world was rebooting from COVID, Russia-Ukraine war hit. By the time it was somewhere, then the Israel-Gaza conflict, and then Mr. Trump came. So there have been these four waves which we could see, which have completely disrupted the order that we have imagined or known. I would rather say, if for some scholars here, since the Peace of Westphalia, when the notion of nation states was, brought forth. Anyway, we'll go into that later. So we are living in an era in which all of these things are happening, the questions and the issues that you set out, sir, it's happening in all world capitals. All world leaders are thinking out what to do next. There's a recalculus going on everywhere in the world. So where do we fit in that, and where does this matrix keep evolving? Trump loves tariffs. All his life, he's had this peeve that other nations are kind of taking unfair advantage of us. We have low import duties. Other nations have very high import duties. He's been griping about it ever since the 1970s, that others are unfair. In his first term, he could not do what he really wanted to do because his administration, the people were not very absolute, his loyalists. This time they are, so he's going at this time. So the first is that he thinks that it's an unfair trade, it should be balanced out. You see, it's unfair, fine. So that's his first with regards to tariff. Second, he looks at tariff as something which brings in money to the US Treasury. I mean, ironically, the tariff money is being paid by American importers, right? They're the ones importing and paying the duty, but fair enough. This money comes into the federal kitty. Before Trump came, as I think we were just discussing, the average American weighted import tariff was around 3%. America imports around $3 trillion worth of goods worldwide. So 3%, 30 trillion, it was getting around $90 billion in the federal treasury. Trump and his team decided that we should go for an average of 20%. So with a 3 trillion import, we would be generating around $600 billion a year. In 10 years, that would mean $6 trillion. How they would allocate, we'll come to that. They know that, prices will go up, inflation will go up. But from this money, he is looking to give some money to the farmers, to satisfy the constituencies which are feeling the pain. So he is looking to use this money that way. He is also looking to use tariffs to promote inward investments. And by the way, he is succeeding in it to some extent or the other. He says, look at a deal with, let's say, EU. The deal is 15% tariff, $1.35 trillion, of which $750 billion to buy energy. How will Europe buy that much energy? We don't know. But $600 investments by European companies in America. Japan, 20% or 15%, whatever tariff, $550 billion. The Japanese have been screaming, crying, petitioning, but wherever somewhere. So Japanese companies to invest around $400-500 billion. And he's saying in the next 3 years, still I am here. He's saying that. It may or may not happen. Similarly, South Korea has been arm twisting them. Come and invest Hyundai for shipbuilding in America. So some of these tariffs are having those impacts. And lastly, the fun thing I think he has discovered, the value of tariffs, is that he thinks in making peace. He's discovered this suddenly, I think. Okay, in the last 6-9 months, that I can threaten both parties and tariffs could work. So these are the reasons that he loves tariffs.
आगे प्रश्नोत्तरी सेशन का आयोजन किया गया जिसमें पैनलिस्ट ने से सवाल जवाब किया गया।
Our topic is behind the US trade deal, and one of the factors you elaborated quite a big deal is on the Russian oil factor. Now, since Ravinder Bhai, you have written a book on how to decode, Trump. The fact remains, that everybody also in the world knows that Putin's biggest or best friend happens to be Trump himself. And suppose this Ukraine war comes to an end, tomorrow, then this entire fear of 500%, I think 2 or 3 some mad Republican senators or representatives have put it on under no circumstances, whatever little exposure I have with this area, kabhi this is not going to be accepted or going to be passed by the American Congress. And forget about it. But the point is, once the Ukraine war comes to an end, and Putin proves to be the biggest friend of Donald Trump, how much one can highlight on this Russian factor? The Russian, that means that embargo automatically or sanctions automatically be minimized or automatically go? Thank you.
Great, interesting. Yeah, absolutely. So probably putting it all together. I think partly that's what Indian diplomacy was working towards, hoping and wanting to, that this war should end ASAP, so that if this war would have ended, we would not have faced this situation, right? Automatically sanctions on Russia would go, but remember the sanctions on Russia will go step by step, but the oil would have gone. Russia is facing, I think, over 2,000 sanctions, and withdrawing them, cancelling them through whatever orders will take at least another 2 years before Russia integrates back. Yes, there is every possibility once the war ends, but we do not know when the war ends. It could stretch on and on as it is stretching on, but there are all indications that Russia and America, in fact, Russia is positioning this whole discussion as as a discussion, negotiation between America and Russia, and Ukraine as a secondary thing. If you see in all of them, they're saying we are opening up diplomatic relations, we will be discussing that. Putin and Russia is projecting it more as a bilateral discussion first between reset of America-India relations, America-Russia relations, and investments. And the Russia
Supporting Trump and that you take over in the Greenland, we have no problem.
Oh yeah,
Putin has very clearly said it.
he should be happy. He will
That
absolutely.
is what we are talking of.
Yes, absolutely. And the Russian side is being led by the head of the sovereign wealth fund, Kirill. They've talked about mining rights and also, yeah. So they're looking at that. So this whole area is pretty, what was the question?
Russian oil,
Huh.
Russian oil.
Huh.
The weather becoming a big factor. It's a big factor.
I do think it is a big factor.
I want a clarity on this. About Russian oil, America is insisting, Donald Trump is insisting that India should decrease or stop buying Russian oil. So what is the clarity? What is the actually fact?
So, actual fact, I mean, I would not know. I'm not a fly on the wall, really, what they decide. But if we look at what is happening, India has started reducing buying Russian oil. Since November was the last month, it was around 2 million barrels a month. In December, it was about 1.2. In January, it's about 1.1. So, India is beginning to reduce. And my own sense is that, as I discussed earlier, the economic basis, it does not make any economic rational basis for India to save $10 billion a year from Russia and keep facing $50 billion or $30 billion loss with America. So given the situation, I think it's an economic decision. That's my reading.
So, I mean, I don't see on these things any favors being done to India, because these are standards that you set. So you can't say that someone can export rotten food to you, others cannot. Okay, so there's, no, I'm saying that of course, but they are generic measures. They are not necessarily specifically only against a country. But what you're saying is absolutely correct, that there are significant non-tariff barriers. Okay, there's also with EU the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is also coming into force. How that will be dealt with in the India-EU FTA is also not very clear at the moment. So if you look at the narrative of the US, it is like, that India has higher tariffs, we have lower tariffs, we are more open than India. But doesn't always work out like that, because generally the non-tariff barriers are much more stringent when India is exporting to advanced economies than it is the other way around. So it's a lot more even in terms of the degree of protection that is being offered than simply when we can read from the tariff pictures. What are the relative levels of tariffs? As far as the oil question is concerned, you see, as far as Russian oil is concerned, if you look at it in the immediate sense, before 22, India was not importing Russian oil. Okay, it's not traditionally been an important source of oil for India. So for them, it might look that at the moment it is something that can, but it might not end with Russian oil. There's also the question of Iran. And there is a difficulty that India is likely to face if it doesn't have freedom, given that it is always going to be a net oil importer and a country with a foreign exchange deficit, if it is not able to have flexibility in terms of where it gets its oil from. When the decision to take Russian oil was concerned, it was also simple economics. It was at that point of time, and it was cheaper because of the sanctions. It was cheaper because of the sanctions. It might not be cheaper if okay.
उदय इंडिया के लिए तुषार कांत शर्मा और सात्विक उपाध्याय की रिपोर्ट।